Most of us live with a quiet tension inside ourselves. One part of us longs to step into our full potential, and another part of us is simply trying to remain safe. Welcome to the Wired for Wellbeing podcast. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Rutstein, and each week we explore how a nervous system perspective can transform the way you live, work, and relate. Each week I'm joined by my good friend and producer, Steve Lessard. Steve, say hi, and have you ever had trouble making a decision?
Every day, seemingly, of my life, Jeffrey. Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm well, and decisions are so loaded for so many of us, but especially if we've had certain experiences, decisions can be a really loaded and charged issue for us. So I want to hear our question, but before we go right into that, Steve, I just wanted to tease something early here, which is that I've been asked for years from clinicians about creating something that would be training them in some of the ways that I work. And I'm happy to announce that I will be offering a small, intense masterclass this late spring. It's about 14 weeks. It's only going to have a maximum of 20 professionals in it. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to drjeffreyrutstein.com/links. And on that page, there'll be a link to the Professional Presence Masterclass. And click on that. It'll give you all the details and a way to register and apply if you're interested. So, Steve, what's the question you have this week for us?
Well, we have a question from Liz this week, and it's an audio question, so I'm going to play it, and then let's talk about what's going on here.
Sounds good.
Hello, this is Liz. I have complex PTSD, which of course comes with other fun things like anxiety and depression. And I was wondering if you can address or give advice about how to work with it in the workplace. I feel like I either get jobs that totally overwhelm me, or I do jobs that are way beneath my pay grade. So I don't know if I should pick something that causes a lot of anxiety, but I'm interested in, or I do something that's very, very simple, but I feel safe. Thanks so much.
So, Jeffrey, when I hear that question, I'm hearing, I think, two things that I can't quite decipher. I'm hearing something around complex PTSD and making decisions. And I think I'm also hearing something around like nervous system safety, playing safe, when to take risks. I don't know what your take is there. Am I understanding that? Do you hear the same thing, or is there something else going on that you can help us maybe start answering this question with?
I think those are perfect doorways in. So again, just to make sure that our listening audience is on the same page with this, complex PTSD is a more complex, usually a more entrenched version of PTSD. So PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, and this can occur in individuals who've been exposed to stressful or traumatic events and experiences. Complex PTSD is when someone has been raised in an environment that felt fairly consistently unsafe, where they felt at risk to danger or being vulnerable to some kind of harm. And what happens is you get all of PTSD's regular symptoms and then some. Like our caller expressed, people who have a complex post-traumatic stress disorder have usually even stronger presentations of depression and anxiety than folks without CPTSD. So there's stronger dysregulation in the nervous system, which causes more emotional problems like anxiety, panic, depression, paralysis, freezing, the kinds of stuff that block us in our interactions and behaviors with the world. So it tells us that a lot of our caller's issues also center around trust of herself and trust of others, because this is one of the many ways that CPTSD impacts us. It makes us very hesitant to trust others because we have been so exposed growing up to how others so easily turn untrustworthy, how they become chaotic or unstable and non consistent in support. So, lots of people with CPTSD, number one, become self reliant because they grew up feeling no one else is going to take care of me. I better try to figure this out myself. Even if I don't do a good job, I'll do something, versus if I wait for other people to do it, it'll never happen. So if one has CPTSD, they look at most things in life from an unsafe point of view. Their nervous system will be sensing for, vigilant for danger, and will often find things, remembrances, triggers, behavioral habits of other people or situations that can remind them of their childhood vulnerability and risk.
So, how do we start to decipher then? Is this fear of me stepping into this thing, in Liz's case, maybe a different job? Um, is the fear of that based in my PTSD or complex PTSD? Is it based in my nervous system just not feeling safe here? Is it based in, I guess, what else could be based in my self worth, my shame? How do we start to parse that?
Right. So, a way that I will often phrase that with the people I work with is you were trying to decide if this is an act of wisdom and compassion, or if this is an act of um, playing it small. So sometimes with wisdom and compassion, we go, you know what? I've stressed enough. I just need to make ends meet right now. I don't need to feel overwhelmed in my job. I'm going to take a job that helps me at least pay the bills and doesn't make me so overwhelmed with fear I'm going to fail. And that could be wisdom in and of itself because it's trying to protect us. It's also a little bit influenced by trauma because it's also bringing forward this projection that I'm going to fail. So if our caller was here in the studio with us, right, one of the things that I would love to get curious with her about is what is it about these higher stress jobs that make her feel unsafe? Is it, on one hand, that she's being asked to do things that she literally does not feel competent in, things that are beyond her current ability? That is very stressful. But sometimes people feel that a job is stressful because they're going to be held accountable or because they're going to be more responsible for more important decisions or actions within an organization. And therefore, they can get all knotted up in the fear of failure, the fear of letting someone down. Now, if someone has CPTSD, their vulnerability to shame will be very high as well. Shame is a very strong legacy of all trauma, but in particular, CPTSD trauma. So a lot of people will be so afraid that their shame worthiness will rise to the top that they'll avoid positions of power or prestige or status because they're afraid with the increased scrutiny, of course, they're just going to fail. And that's really one's voice of shame trying to convince you to stay small. You don't want that. You're going to fail. Don't do that. It's too much. You can't do that. Who are you fooling? Right? So part of it is beginning to listen to the narrative to determine whether it's coming from shame or wisdom and compassion. And one of the ways we can do that is to actually feel, notice, sense the quality, the tone of that inner narration. If that inner narration is screaming at you or scolding you or impatient with you or, what are you, a fool? Why would you do this? Then chances are that that kind of a tone is a hint that there's shame, judgment, criticism that's really at root of this.
In your opening example, you shared that, maybe you're looking at this situation and realizing, you know what, I don't want to stretch myself right now. It's not the time for me to move that. There's too many other things going on to have that maybe expanded responsibility or different schedule. And what occurred to me is how hidden or how shame can take that potentially, and how narrow that self-care movement of saying, you know what, right now is not the time. This thing that I want to move into, not right now. The courage that that takes to realize, as you're describing the quality of it as a self-care step, seems potentially really, again, fraught and fuzzy. I don't know if you have thoughts or feedback on that. That tightrope. It seems like we almost have to walk to say, is this self-care or is this me trying to be small?
So one of the things we can also tune into is when we're imagining this decision, are we imagining it more through the eyes of other people? What will others think of me if I do this?
I love that lens.
Right? Because that helps us know right away if it's shame-based or not. If I'm more preoccupied with what others are going to think about me, then I have in those moments abandoned my needs and am now elevating what I imagine other people imagining about me. Now, if you've had trauma or if you've just had adversity, shame is going to be more present than you'd like in lots of your decision-making actions. And I believe for a caller, it's in here too. So she can begin to listen to the voice that describes each of these to her, right? It's clear that the lower stress one clearly feels safe for her. But again, I want to get curious about what about it feels safe? Is it the less pressure? Is it the less worry about failing because it's so easy for you? There's less of a chance of failing. Or if you do fail, it's not as essential if you fail something as, say, a line worker versus as a supervisor of a huge group of employees. Then, there's much more, the higher you are, there's much more trickle down effect that could happen that could be negative. So I'd really like to tune in more. And I think for each of us, right, we need to start looking at when we're thinking about a step, an expansion, something to honor our potential. I'm ready for more challenge, or I'd like to see how I am managing people, or I don't want to play so small. I want to offer what's inside of me a little bit more freely. All of these steps are courageous steps to feel like it's safe enough and we're entitled to begin to offer more of who we are. And each of us has some internal friction about whether that's really safe. Well, I shouldn't say everybody. There are people who are born without any obvious inner ability to feel shame, but they're not the most common in the world. The more common arrangement of people is people who have access to guilt and shame and actually find sometimes that that's what holds them back in their life.
I found it curious that Liz has a level of awareness, it seems like, around the two options. Do I stay safe or do I push myself? And I wonder, like, I don't know how common that is, right? Like, there's definitely things in my life that I don't know that I'm playing safe or taking a risk. So I saw that in Liz's question. I don't know what that tells you about where Liz is or what Liz might be grappling with.
Well, that's a great observation, Steve, because it is a feat to truly be able to have enough clarity and awareness to see ourselves and to see ourselves fairly clearly, not so distorted. Most of us see ourselves distorted because we look at ourselves through anger or shame or despair, and we're not really seeing ourselves in the world in a true and objective light. Then we're seeing it through the lens of that state, and it colors everything. In our caller, Liz, she was able to see that she kind of bounces back and forth between these poles of a decision. Do I do this or do I do this? And each one seems like it's saying something about her. The safer job, the easier job is safe, but maybe it feels a little beneath her. She's aware of something that kind of pulls her towards maybe a higher paying, higher challenge job, but she then may get overwhelmed by the emphasis on the fear of failing at what the job is asking her. And that's something that's not just inherent in the job, right? That's something that her nervous system is bringing, and it may be biased by her shame. Oh, look at that. You're not going to be able to do that. You're going to fail. You're going to be, out of your depth. You should really back away from this. And again, we do want to discern if there's a true voice saying, no, like you're not interested in this and you can't do this, right? Versus my shame telling me, because my shame will always tell me, if I listen to it first, it will always tell me I can do nothing, or I can do nothing well enough, or I should have done it well enough earlier. It doesn't matter now if I do it well enough. I already missed the first time where it shouldn't have been a mistake. In other words, shame will never let you rest in what you can do, in what is potential and possibility. It only makes you focus on what's already ruined, what you've already messed up, or what's never going to happen.
I see in my career working with teammates and employees and team members, as well as in my own trajectory, I don't think we have great models to fail safely. And that's a little bit what I'm hearing here as well, as like, if we take a risk and fail, what does failing safely look like? How do we do that? And how much harder is it with a history of trauma?
Well, again, it feels like, Liz, and many of us do the same thing. We feel like these decisions are permanent. But again, if Liz was in the studio with this, I would be speaking to her about number one. It doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be a binary. Either it's too easy or it's too hard. There probably are jobs that are out there that could be somewhere in the middle. And maybe her nervous system is not letting her see those as viable choices. There's a chance that not many of them are available, but I'm pretty sure that it doesn't have to be such a stark and wide contrast. Either a job that will devour her or a job that she could have brain death and still be doing. In other words, like they're two extremes. So I'd get curious about whether those really are, because our nervous system is very good at painting these false dichotomies. We're either all good or we're all bad. That's kind of the voice of shame and of anger. So it feels to me like this inflexibility about the either orness is an expression of the defensive state. And so if I had to make guesses about Liz's state, so we know that she survived CPTSD. People's nervous systems tend to stay in dysregulation. And I'm imagining that hers is probably a bit more in sympathetic fight or flight dysregulation versus shutdown, collapse, withdrawal, dissociate, go numb. So because I'm guessing that she's a little bit more in sympathetic fight or flight, she's going to notice her vigilance about not wanting to set up danger or failure, and her desire to make things as containable and safe as possible all the time. And that alone may get her to shy away from any challenges, because her anxiety may feel like, why do any challenge? There's just a better chance you'll fail. It's going to want you to step back. Remember, your nervous system isn't interested in your fulfillment, in your potential, in your growth. It just wants to keep you safe. And if that means stuffing you in a freezer for 10 years, that's just fine. Your nervous system will deal with that. But if taking another job could feel dangerous, it's going to do everything in its power to discourage you. And it'll do it by the tag team of shame and anxiety. Anxiety making us feel more the fear of, oh, what if I don't have the goods for this? What if I can't keep up with this? What will other people think if I'm doing this job? Will they think better of me or worse of me? So it can get all caught up in interpersonal safety and in potential for shame and criticism. And bottom line, it's important to discern what our nervous system may be perceiving as stressful, but being mismatched. It may really have been stressful for Liz to have disappointed, I'm going to make this up, a parent when she was growing up. Maybe they would have gotten angry or violent or very, very harsh. But her nervous system may be now taking that traumatic type of experience and plugging it into the job center, so that now, if she fails, she will once again be scorned or punished or rejected and harmed like her parents did to her. Her nervous system may feel the same amount of risk and danger. And it's sort of standing in her way of being on her own 2 feet, of exploring and owning her own power. It's going to argue to keep her small and safe and functioning below her capacity because that was allowed back then too. Shame doesn't ever want us to be big or strong or full of ourselves. It wants us to keep us scared and tentative, doubtful, and shrunken.
Bummer.
Yes, yes, well said.
It's seemingly a lot to realize and process and navigate in
Yes,
life, on top of, just our evolution has not moved fast enough to meet our modern realities, that we still have these parts of our brain that just making sure the heart keeps ticking and the genes get carried on.
that's it. That's it. It's very, very materialistic and mechanistic. It's not about any higher order. It's just about survival. And as long as we understand that, we can hear the data that it gives us as information and useful, but it's not about our worth. It's not about who we are. It's just reflecting the state of our nervous system in the moment. But just because you're anxious doesn't mean, oh, that means that really is something lacking and you really can't do this. It just means it doesn't feel safe to even think about doing it.
I want to loop back to Liz's question, because tied into what I heard and what I maybe butchered in an early question to you is this. What I hear in this is Liz's desire to potentially grow, to
Yes.
expand, to grow. And what I want to come back to is maybe the pressure we put on ourselves that growth has to be linear. I have to be 15% better next year than I was last year and the year after that. Or at a company, our profits need to be 10%, 20% higher year over year. And I don't know anything in the world organic that does that, right? Like the seasons exist, so there's a downtime in the winter and plants can rest. So I'm cluing into this idea that, like, is there some stress here that Liz might be putting on herself, that growth has to be linear, it has to look a certain way, and periods of seeming pause are actually what we need?
Yeah. So first of all, yeah, those are good insights, Steve. I would sharpen the first one a little bit by saying that it's helpful to know how we would define growth.
Hmm.
Because so many of us adopt what other people tell us, society or clergy or parents or educators or your therapist or your coach or your neighbor. It's important for us to begin to actually define, well, what would feel like growth for me, right? Would it be taking a more intense job? Would it be actually some creative expression? Would it be me getting more vulnerable in a relationship? What would it actually look like? That's the first thing. And the second thing is, yeah, whatever we think of growth, it almost never looks like that. Growth happens in starts and stops. It 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 does go fallow. We go through months or years where it seems like growth is very much in the background. And then we can go through weeks or months or years where it feels like we're doing nothing but rapidly, exponentially changing or growing. And this is quite normal. We really can't control that, but we can create the situations where we nourish growth. And one of the things is just becoming aware of our tendencies and habits that keep us small and the same, that keep us keeping a very small footprint in our life, doing the very same things almost every day, sort of living more by rote than by aliveness. I think that there is a maturing that can happen when we stop looking at, do I grow up enough for other people, versus do I feel mature enough or good enough in myself that I can enjoy me and I can enjoy this life and I can enjoy relationships and things don't have to be perfect. But it feels like life is good enough. We so focus on what's missing in us and in life. And that's a nervous system habit as well, that it still looks at any problem outside of us as something that should be fixed by us. Our mood or the world's mood, violence in the world or violence in us, somehow we're supposed to do something. And so, again, it focuses back on being in touch with what we actually need and finding ways to support our growth that feels safe. And like you said, organic before, not forced, not because I should, but because this is a value of mine. This is what's important to me, right? And again, that would be important for Liz to, in other words, like, don't grow because other people suggest she grow. She should do something about exploring her edge because she wants to. She feels ready for it. And this feels like a choice she's comfortably making. Otherwise, we repeat our old patterns of abuse by feeling things are forced on us. So, what we choose and how we choose it are important, but it's really, really helpful to pull back the screen a little bit and see from what states are we making these decisions, right? If I'm a little bit more regulated, I'm going to be able to make a much wiser, skillful decision about what I do with a job than if I'm more located in fight, flight, or freeze, or if I'm sliding into shutdown and collapse. I'll be overwhelmed to make a decision, or I'll be conflicted if I'm up here about making the right decision, and I'll bounce back and forth. If I can find my way to a little regulation, and if Liz can too, she may find that she has some feeling sense, a felt sense about what direction she's more drawn to. Not the one she should take, but the one that feels affirming or attracting to her, something that she wants to do more of in that. But we don't tune into that if we're still overrun by fight or flight or shutdown. That's why we may need to do a little bit of practice to land back in our body in regulation.
I want to give you the opportunity just to see if there's anything else in this topic or point that you wanted to touch on today or bring forward before we start our closing sequence.
I do think that this is a question that so many of us work with, whether we're aware of it or not. And some of us dream about the other things we could do in our life. If I had $1 million, I could do this. Or if I had a graduate education, I could do this. And some of those are pipe dreams. We're never going to have them. But not all of them are pipe dreams. Some of them are about the capacities we'd like to grow in us, or we'd like the ability to share something that feels valuable to us and valuable to others. And we want to feel comfortable, confident, allowed to be able to offer that. So when we have these impulses for service, for generativity, for offering things, whether it's through our job, volunteer work, just our being in relationship, I think those are all signs of growth as long as we're aware that there's this inner desire to provide them and do them versus a felt compliance with an outside expectation of having to be this way. If we're doing growth because of a felt outside demand or compliance, we're not growing for us. Right? We're doing something once again to be good enough or lovable enough for other people. So going back to Liz, taking on this more intense job would be potentially valuable as long as it was something she really wanted to experience and see how well she handled it, whether she's grown enough and can feel comfortable in this, or if not, then she could move out of it. But this idea of not consigning ourselves because of our fears, but really getting clear about, would that actually happen now? Maybe it would, but maybe it wouldn't. Most of the time when we're in defensive states, we're not curious, we're certain. So that's why you hear me say, especially today, I'm inviting Liz to get curious about what else is here, because I think if she touches into regulation and she gets curious, she's going to get a lot more input about these two charged offerings, either the under her pay grade work or the at or above her pay grade work.
Jeffrey, at the beginning, you teased the professional program, and I want to give you the opportunity to give us a little bit more about that and where we can get more info.
Great. So this upcoming professional program has been something in the works for many years. And I'm excited to be at a place now where I feel ready to really offer this and to sort of mentor a small group, intimate group of therapists about a more fully conscious way of embodying our work, both because it makes it incredibly easier, but it also allows our presence to actually be a significant part of the intervention. So, like I said, it's going to be a 14-week intensive, and people will get admitted by registration. I'm looking for folks who are in the mental health field, who've been doing therapy for at least 5 or 10 years, have had ideally some experience with trauma and or somatic work, but very curious clinicians are also welcome to apply. And again, you can find that at drjeffreyrutstein.com/links. And then when you go to that page, you'll see the Professional Presence Masterclass. Click on that. You can learn all the details.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for painting that picture. I'm excited about the program, and I hope friends out there join us in that journey. What about questions?
If you would like to send a question, feel free to call 866-357-5156, and you can leave a voicemail there for us. If for any reason you can't reach that number because you're calling outside the United States and can't reach that exchange, feel free to send an email with an audio file or without to hello@drjeffreyrutstein.com. And if you would like a 20-minute video, a free gift on my website that goes into more exploration of our nervous system states and specific practices to work with finding your way back to regulation, go to drjeffreyrutstein.com/links. And on that page, you'll look for free gift, and it will take you right to the Why Do You Feel Stuck video. Steve, as always, thank you so much for joining me. And I always appreciate your take on things, your questions, and really helps me clarify it. And I know that it helps our audience let this sink in a little deeper. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. And I also benefit greatly from these talks that we get to do and have. And I'm going to absolutely start taking this question in. Am I making this decision for me, or am I making this decision for someone else? That's going to be a powerful takeaway for me for this episode. So thank you for that gift, and thank you for the gift of all of your wisdom here in this podcast. And I'll catch you next week.
Thank you, friend. Remember, this podcast is for informational purposes only and isn't a substitute for professional mental or physical health care. If you are struggling, please reach out to a qualified healthcare professional. Thank you all for being with us today. I appreciate it. Until next time, bye for now.